So you finally landed. So you can release your seatbelts. I hope your flight was good. And now that you've seen that I'm actually alive, I'm just gonna turn my screen. Et voila. And suddenly you are finally in Venice. Okay, so as mentioned, yes, I am. I lived my life long in Venice. I studied here, and after a while, I left home to go traveling. But as you can see, I could not really leave this beauty that we have right in front. Now, we have very little time, so sit tight because we have to go through so much stuff. Now, first of all, where are we? We are right, literally 2 minutes from St. Mark's Square. St. Mark's Square is the center for Venice. Once upon a time, it was the political and religious center for the city. Right here, we are looking at what's known as Riva degli Schiavoni. Riva degli Schiavoni, it only means, the word Schiavoni for you might sound like slaves, but they're actually the people living just across the coastline from Venice. And that's Yugoslavia, Slovenia, ex-Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia. And they used to work all along here, building, loading ships and unloading ships. Some of you might probably know by now that Venice made her fortune in trade. Now, we will go back to trade, but before that, I'd just love to show you what it's known as the Bacino di San Marco, which is the space of water right in front of St. Mark's Square. This is the island of San Giorgio, inhabited from the 7th century. And this is the island of Giudecca. Now, something else which is very interesting, which I need to show you before we go further with our visit, is one of the most famous bridges that we have in Venice. And this you might have heard of. It's called the Bridge of Sighs. The Bridge of Sighs. So Bridge of Sighs connects the prisons, which were actually some very hard and very quite severe, let's say, prisons. So you wouldn't come out alive out of this. And it was connected to the Palazzo Ducale, the Doge's Palace. Here we go. Doge's Palace. So you were judged here, and you would go through this bridge here, look for the last time at the light across the lagoon, and you would have seen this view here, and you would have ended up in the prisons over there. Probably you would have never seen again light. So let's go a little bit further down. Now, just few interesting things. So I am not sure, I would love to have the chance to ask you, how many people have been to Venice before, and do you know the city? Do you know we are on the water, so most of the times you find yourself walking for miles and miles a day. Easily in a day you would walk probably about 8 to 9 miles, if not even more. We don't drive. I'm actually one of the worst driver ever known in the city. Probably, I think I've driven about maybe 3 times. So I wish you won't cross my path if I need to take a car. And this is one of the, what used to be our former means of transportation. So you might have seen this before. Gondolas, that's what it's called. Gondolas. They are now mainly boats that the tourists would use, and they are approximately 400 in town. To become a gondolier, you need to get a test. You need to get a test both in languages and also in the general knowledge, of course, of the city. Now we are getting closer to the main square, but before we go any further, I actually forgot one essential thing, because maybe some of you might not know where Venice is. Where are we? Oh, let me just get hold of a good Venetian that could give me a hand. Hello, lady. Can you hold this map for you? This is a very kind person. Here we go. Thank you. And Italy, it's exactly like this. And this is exactly where Venice is. So this is the Italian peninsula. So we are on the northeast of Italy. Thank you very much, lovely lady. Are you doing anything for the next hour? You might like to follow me around. I might need your help. Eccolo. Okay, so now Palazzo Ducale. Palazzo Ducale, so the Doge's Palace is the place where the Doge, which used to be the palace where our, let's say, Duke used to stay. The Doge was elected for life, and he was. We've started to have the first Doges elected in 697. We had a total amount of 120 Doge in the course of 1100 years. And here we go. So we are in the middle of this incredible city in one of the most well-known square. And, with mountains of capitals, plenty of traders with ready ships and awesome military, Venice was a commercial powerhouse amongst the 6 biggest cities of Europe. If we think that in the 15th century, we have approximately 180,000 citizens, and at least 1,000 of them were fabulously rich and wealthy. Now, as you can see, this can actually be considered the ceremonial front doors. So we've got 2 mighty columns here, and I'll tell you what's on top in a minute. And as you can see from here, if this was the front door, it's unfortified. And this is exactly the place where we used to welcome visitors to this incredible and powerful republic. Okay, now from down here, we can see there's a tail, and actually, and this is the winged lion, which is the symbol of St. Mark, the patron saint of Venice. And then on the other hand, and it's exactly here, it's St. Theodore. St. Theodore, it's the Greek patron saint that was replaced by St. Mark, which is over here. Now, I'm going back just a second to the lacy exteriors of this perfect blend between East and West, which is called Venetian Gothic. And again, this is the Palazzo Ducale. Now, I have to tell you, I have done something that the Venetians would never do, which is walking between the 2 columns. So most of the capital executions were actually taking place exactly in the middle of the 2 columns. So in general, the Venetians, which are extremely superstitious still, would never walk between the columns. Or something else that it's quite interesting. I'm not sure if you can see from further away, this is a clock tower, which is extremely famous for us Venetians. So it's a clock tower that was built in 1499. Now, when we were little, our mom would say, I show you what time it is. And this is only to say that, she would really show you how bad, if you were behaving badly, she would really, she wouldn't execute you between the 2 columns, but she will definitely punish you in a bad way. So you would have to see the hours that are usually shown on this clock. Okay, again, our Palazzo Ducale. Interestingly enough, I have to tell you something else. So we said it's 120 doges that we elected throughout centuries. How did they elect the doge? Interesting fact, it's the beginning, the very first 28 doges, which are elected approximately in the course of 250 years. They are elected by voice, meaning they would have all the population of Venice, possibly in the main square, which is this one. And they would ask, they would give a list of names, and they would ask, who would be the next doge coming? And the names that you could hear the most, it would be actually the next doge. Of course, the elections changes throughout centuries. But I just tell you that in between these 28 doges that we elect, only 8 of them would die of natural death. All the others have been either executed.
Okay.
4 of them were blinded. Some actually escaped. 8 of them escaped Venice because they couldn't really face the course of staying in the government with so many problems that they could have gone across. Right, now let's leave for a minute the doges, but I would love to show you, this is the main entry of the Doge's Palace. And right next to here, we've got the Basilica di San Marco, St. Mark's Basilica. St. Mark's Basilica, it really is the jewel of our city, together, of course, with the Palazzo Ducale. I'm just going to go a little bit further, and I love to show you the view of the Basilica. Now, interestingly enough, you remember we spoke about Saint Theodore. Now, Saint Theodore, this Greek saint, which was actually a soldier during his life, he was replaced by Saint Mark, mainly because the Venetians decided that it was, the power of Venice became so important that they decided that they needed to have possibly some more important ancient bones to bury in the basilica. So to gain importance and kind of legitimacy, the Venetians need some important relics. And the legend says that St. Mark traveled here personally, bringing Christianity to the region, and his bones in the basilica would have been perfect. So what do the Venetians do? They sent off 2 poor sailors to Alexandria, where St. Mark was buried, and asked them to literally steal the body of St. Mark. This is exactly what happens. 828, the body of St. Mark arrives here, and that's when we have the very first constructions of the basilica. Now, what we are looking at, though, is not the 828 basilica, it's the 3rd version, because in between the arrival of the body and the opening of the 3rd basilica, we have the 2 of them are totally distracted, and they actually end up one on fire and the other one had to be reconstructed. One more thing only I'd like to show you, and then we're off to a new adventure. This is actually the oldest mosaic that we have on the church, and this is 1270. The only interesting thing that I find here, only and most interesting, is that the basilica, I don't know if you can see it, it's clear, but it looks exactly as it is right now. Now, also, as you can see, we have many different decorations of mosaics, which have been started from approximately the 1200s and have been also replaced throughout history until the 1800s. What are mosaics? Mosaics are actually pieces of sorry, they're pieces of glass, and I just would like to show you what they look like. And they look like this. Okay, so imagine to put all this together and to compose one figure. Okay, now, okay. Now, what's next? Now, with all the buildings that you see around here, these are the procuratie. Procuratie were the offices to the procurators, which are the helpers to the Doge. The Doge, at one point, he really has a lot on his plate to work with. And Venice, of course, is in between conquering some of the mainland. And we, by the 1200s, we've also occupied Constantinople. So there's a lot of work going on. Now, the reason why I'm here is this plaque over here. And I'm not sure if you see it. Now I'm gonna have my friend that I just found to stand over here so that you can see exactly where this reaches her. Okay, this is the mark of the high tide, the highest tide that we got in the past 100 years. And that's the 4th of November, 1966. Everyone, I think, remembers this because even in other parts of Italy, like Florence, for example, we've had huge floods which destroyed quite a lot of works of art. And Venice is definitely one of the places that was most heated together with Florence. Okay. Now we are going for a brisk walk. Now you can sit, and we are going to have another part of adventure today in Venice. Now, in the meantime, I'll just tell you some more. So we said it's a city on water, but it's a city on, marshy land. So there's no drinking water as such. The Venetians used to collect the rainwater with some wells which are placed in every campo. So the city is full of squares, which we call campo. I'm sure some of you probably speak some Spanish, and you can probably relate to campo, to possibly, green areas. And this is exactly what it was, because a lot of squares in Venice were full of grass. We have paved Venice as it is right now, just fairly recently. Now, mind you, recently for us, it's approximately from the 16th, 17th, 1800s. Of course, these are all stones which are replaced very often. And actually, this is one particular stone which is taken from a volcanic area, which is very close to here. I think there might be somebody that is not on mute. I can hear some voice. Okay, so we're going back now on our bridge. Now, something else that's quite important. Venice is composed by how many islands? How many islands we've got? It's 118 islands, and we are all connecting Venice with all these bridges. So every day we cross several islands. Let's say that in a day, easily, you probably walk through 50 small islands. So it means that every time you're crossing a bridge like this one, you go from one island to another island. Okay, people. So I know we should be about maybe 200 of us. I would like to take you on a ride on a boat. I don't know if we can fit all in here. Bonjour. Can you take us on a boat? Sì? Ok, andiamo. Andiamo. Oh, ce la faccio. Ok, allora. And here we go. And so now our friend, right, so have a look at this. This is the typical little boat.
I just wish we could hear it.
This is a typical boat that every Venetian would have. This is a boat that you know, usually
from a visual perspective
is for a family. Now have a look, because you are going to get one of the most incredible views. All right. Okay. Here we go. Voila. Now this is exactly what the visitors that would come to Venice, you know, I mean, we're talking about, you know, anyone, and the dignitaries and the diplomats and the merchants and any politician that would have come to Venice, they would have arrived exactly all in this area here. Now, as we can see from the boat, so we have again the Palazzo Ducale, the Doge's Palace. You can now see very well the two columns, the Campanile, which is actually fairly recent because it did collapse in 1904. And now, in a minute, you're going to see the gardens, which have been just remodeled, literally just very, very recently. So next time you will come to Venice, you will see the gardens. And now I'm just going to turn, but I see that we have reflection, which is quite strong. As you can see, we have a gondolier there, and he's waiting for us actually. So you're probably wondering, how does it work with the right way here in Venice? It works, but it works, it's literally a lot of times it's a, you know, it's sort of a exchange of eyes in between the two conductors. Now, before we miss too many things, this is the beginning of the Grand Canal. This is Custom House, just here to the left. Now, I have to tell you, when I was small and I wasn't very keen about school, it didn't happen very often, I must admit, but you know, this is the place where I would hide. And this sphere that you see is got an angel right on top, which turns with the wind. And we know when the veil is towards the Grand Canal that the weather will get better. And let me just show you. Okay, some of you might know Harry's Bar. It's a very famous bar that is just over here, very well known because it was actually financed by Harry Pickering, which was an American that came here and gave a hand to Venetians that wanted to open his own business. Something else which is super fantastic, Santa Maria della Salute, a church, and this we can all relate to this, was built for the last pandemic, which happened in 1630. Last pandemic killed over a third of the population in Venice. So we always celebrate the end of the pandemic. Third weekend of November, we built a bridge that connects this to the other side, and we have a procession, and we will always bring candles to the church. Now, let me just, okay, I'm just gonna put myself like this. I hope the reflection is not too bad. And voila. Now we've entered the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal is the main way that crosses Venice, an inverted S, and you've got over 160 palaces that are overlooking the water. Now you have some of the most incredible stories here behind. Now I'm just gonna mention maybe a couple of interesting things here. Now, for example, so we've got several different styles that develops on the Grand Canal. You can see some Gothic buildings like this one. You can see some more rounded arches, which are taking you back a little bit towards the Renaissance. Now, instead, I'm going to show you what for me is one of the most beautiful and delightful palaces that we have. And it's called Cadario, and it's this one over here. Now, Cadario goes back to 1480, and you see how many different, the facade is inlaid with fine marbles, with shimmering chromatic effects, which are really actually taking us back to the patrons, which used to buy marbles and stone while in Constantinople. And here we go again. So it's quite interesting. It's got like a telephone dial here effect. Something else which is instead extremely, you probably might recognize this name here, and this is Peggy Guggenheim. This is Peggy Guggenheim collection here. This very interesting lady here lived here and died in 1979. She's still buried here. She's actually buried here with their 6 dogs, believe it or not. The collection includes works of art of prominent Italian futurists and American modernists working in genres like Cubism, Surrealism, abstract expressionism, etc. And whenever you're going to come, this is definitely one place I would advise you to visit. Okay, let's go for a few more basic information. So these palaces here, as you can see, look at this one. Isn't this beautiful? This is actually quite recent. It's been recently decorated. Recent for us, it's about 150 years. This makes you a little bit imagine what must have been back in time, the decorations of palaces of Venice. Other important, very important thing, the facades that you have on what we call Porta d'Acqua, which is the door on the water, which was for us our main entrance. Because remember that we would always move around with boats. So you would access your house from here. It's just, and now you can actually see a little bit the interiors of the palaces. After this, usually, so on the ground level, you have, you've got warehouses. The first floor, which for us, I don't know if you know, but for us in Europe, the first floor is this one. So for us, this is 0, and the first floor is the one above. The first floor, it's usually what we call the main, let's say, family floor. It's the floor where you have meetings with your clients, but it's also the floor where you might have your family gatherings. Now, of course, the palaces used to be lived by, quite a lot of people, not only a family of, what might be 4. Before we go any further, I'd love to show you one of the first bridges. So we have 3 bridges that crosses the Grand Canal. This is one of the 3. Now, again, as you can see, the styles are incredible. This is one of my favorite palace. This is Palazzo Falliere. It's a Gothic building that goes back to the beginning of 1500s. There's been only a few structural changes, and they actually rent room right now. So next time you come, it might be a place to consider. Why not? Allora, something else that we've not mentioned. What are these very strange things which are floating on the Grand Canal? They are our Vaporetto stops. Vaporetto stop is the stop that we have for our public boats. We said the Venetians have, this is our taxi, what a taxi looks like. We are sitting on what it's usually a family boat. And the Vaporetto is our public boat. I don't want to miss this stop either, because this is the church where somebody very, very well known was baptized, and that's Giacomo Casanova. Some of you might know Giacomo from some interesting interests that he used to have, Giacomo Casanova. Now, instead, across the Grand Canal, Ca' Foscari is mid-century, mid-15th century. This is the headquarters of university. So if by any chance you come to maybe for a semester away, why not a semester in Venice, you might go and register here. Instead, I have a story for this palace here, which is the Palazzo Giustiniani. Palazzo Giustiniani, it's quite an interesting palace for the family that used to live there. They were just about to extinguish, only narrowly avoided the extinction during the Crusades, when the Pope gave permission to one of the surviving male members, which was a Benedictine monk, to marry and to save the line of the family. Now, he had, having fathered 9 boys and 3 girls, he then returned to the monastery while their wife became a nun. I'm not sure about this story, but that's exactly how it goes. Allora. So we are now, we've turned the, let's say, one of the curve of the canal, of the Grand Canal. We are now heading towards the Rialto Bridge. And, okay, and let's have a look at this side of the canal. Now we've got several boats, which are just exactly what I was explaining to you. The cars, let's imagine that was your car. When do we use the boats? Pretty much every day, if it doesn't rain. Right, and this is a gondola over here, and another bus boat stop for us, and the Vaporetto is just coming along. Now, we literally just passed as well Palazzo Mochenigo, the palace which also hosted Lord Byron, which stayed here in 1888. I love to attract your attention to these beautiful decorations of the palace that we have here to the right. This goes back to the 1600s, and it's 1700 for this yellow one. Scaffolding, as you can probably imagine, we have ongoing work on palaces of the Grand Canal. Now, there's another fabulous stories as well coming up. And it's it regards Palazzo Grimani, which is the palace over here, Palazzo Grimani. This was built in 1556. The architect is a gentleman called Michele San Michele. Now, this is, we don't know if this is a legend or not, but Girolamo, which is actually the gentleman that built the palace, fell in love with a beautiful girl of the family Tiepolo, which lived exactly in this tiny little palace over here. Now, of course, the gentleman from this palace asked to the father of the lady, of Anna, to marry her. But the father of Anna said, I am never going to give my daughter to marry a gentleman that doesn't have a palace on the Grand Canal. So this is exactly what happens just after that. Girolamo finds a new wife and he decides to build his palace. And I just tell you that the entry door, it's as big as the first floor of the palace that we've just mentioned. Allora, yes, of course, please drop. I'm expecting tons of questions after this, right? So you better get ready. Better get ready. I don't like to speak to myself here with this screen. Now, just a mention to these two palaces here. So if you decide to come and get married in Venice, maybe on the Grand Canal, these are the offices where you will be taking, I think you say taking your vows. I hope I got that one right. And signore e signori, here we go. This is, I hope you've seen this before, or you might have heard, or you might know the name, Il Ponte di Rialto. So the Rialto Bridge, finally Rialto. So Rialto, we've always had the bridge here for a very specific reason. And this is, this is what we are going to see afterwards. But we've had the wooden bridge. We've had all kinds of bridges. One of the last bridges in the 1400s collapsed under the weight of the people that were attending a procession. So they decided to build a stone bridge. They wanted to have it very, very big. And this is exactly what they have. There's something that I love to mention just before we go under with our boat. You have a statue here, which is an angel. You have a dove here, which is announcing to Holy Mary, which stands over here, the arrival of Christ. And this is the Annunciation. I'm mentioning this only because some of you might know, maybe you don't. This year we have celebrated our 1600 years of life of Venice. So Venice, as a legend, was born on the 25th of March of 421. Now, we are going a little bit further because I'd love to show you the bridge as well from the back. And here we go. And by the way, the gentleman here that is taking us around is called Marco. And okay, so I can see some questions. I replied to some of them. Allora, I've seen one, do people swim in the canal? Please don't ever think about it. Please don't even dream about swimming in these canals. I love to go into further details. I just tell you that they're not extremely clean and it's best that you don't swim. Typical food, I've seen this question going by. The typical food, we are brought up on water. So we're brought up on water. We love fish of any kind. So we tend to really, we are able to cook all kinds. In particular, what we call simple fish. Simple fish, we're talking about sardines, squids, any kind of fish that maybe doesn't, that it's not very expensive. I've seen as well, does water ever freeze? Now I have to tell you, so as I was telling you, no, I might have not mentioned, but my family has been here for several hundred years. My mom was telling me that during just before, at the beginning of the Second World War, she had seen several times the water freezing. So they used to walk to the island where our cemetery is, which is the island of San Michele. And it's actually, you know, it's a fairly good walk. So it's not that it would have had to be quite frozen. Now, people say goodbye to the Grand Canal. This is the perfect, we used to call it Kodak moment. This is no more Kodak, I say. It's a very digital moment. Now, we are going to get off in Rialto. I just want to take you just for a quick brisk walk, and you can actually sit comfortably. You see this? These are the signs for speed. So we need to respect the speed. If we don't, we're fined. And the worst can actually be that they take your license away and your boat too. Okay, now in a minute, let's hope that we're not gonna jump in the water, because I've actually put my Sunday dress for you. And I don't wanna ruin it as well. It's not very warm either. So just give us a second and we'll be getting off. Allora, grazie Marco. Ci vediamo tra poco. Allora, right, people, I'm just look, this is my boat. Ciao Marco. Okay, now I hope I'm not spinning your head around. I just wanted to show you. So some of you were asking about food. This is where I come for my shopping. And this is usually the fruit market. I'm just wondering which side shall we go? Shall we go over that side? Let's go over this side here. Right. So if you come with me to do the shopping, we first would buy the fish here. Usually our markets, open markets are open from approximately 7:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock. And after that, that's it. It's all closed. And this is instead the area where we've got fruit and vegetables. Okay, fabulous. I just want to have another few minutes because I love to show you the direct connections that we have with St. Mark and everything that we talked about, which is extremely important. Has a lot of other medieval and Renaissance cities, like for example, I can think about Florence, for example, or Siena in Italy. The center, it's usually developed in two different areas. So we've seen the political and religious center, and we are now heading to what used to be the place that produced the money for Venice. And so we are gonna go towards the area where the very first banks were established. Now, for Italy, we are not the first, we did not have the very first banks. The first city that has banks is actually Siena. Allora, as you can see, Venice has reopened, so we do have a lot of people around. And I'm just gonna show you first the Banco Giro. What was this Banco Giro? I'm just gonna show you first. Okay, right, here we go. Allora, so this is all the area of the Banco Giro. Nowadays, it's a fabulous area where we've got lots of restaurants, we've got lots of cafes. But back in time, this was the center of financial exchanges. And the word, the only thing that gives it away is the word Banco Giro. What does it mean? Some of you that speak Spanish, French, you might go back to the word banco. Banco, which gives us the word banca, which is bank. It means table. So you have to figure out that all over here you had tables and tables and tables and tables of people just waiting for you to present possibly a document that would say, okay, I have, I have a whole load of spices, or I have a whole load of silver. I want to sell it. And they would, exchange this with maybe some money. Exactly. Thank you for whoever wrote the message. They give you some money or something else, which is extremely, if you think about the time. So you are looking at, something that started about the 13th, 14th century. You could come here, you go to one of the bankers, and you would say, okay, I would like to collect this money that I'm giving you in, for example, one place that we used to trade a lot with was Damascus in Syria. So can I get this money to my representative in Damascus? And this is exactly what used to happen in this beautiful square here. Now, something else which is interesting, I'm not going to go over there because I want to show you something more. Up here, just where I'm pointing, there is a small column where we used to make public announcements. So you probably think, well, why would they, be standing on top of a column to make public announcements, right? Just remember, no television, no faxes. Well, faxes, you probably don't even know what they are. No internet, no radio, no nothing. So anytime that we needed to convey some information to the population, it would have been in public places where you would have had a lot of people standing. So Summer Square and Rialto were the busiest areas of Venice. Now, imagine the squares as well that we have are also extremely important because that's exactly where you get the most important information. So if you needed to know, when the next ship going to, or when, the next, maybe the scoop for the next election of the Doge, etc., you would come to a square. Let's say that, if you needed to, you could be nosy and possibly try to get some informations that you needed in one of these squares. These squares, imagine, it could have been, you could somehow imagine that there are some, you probably don't use Facebook as much as you used to, but Facebook page, it would be the square that we have nowadays. So just a sort of mix of information. Allora, I came here because I want to show you the Rialto Bridge from this part here. As you can see, the water today is quite high, and in some areas, actually, the water is coming over the walkway. And over here, we've got another fantastic palace. Next time you come here, I am going to bring you on top of the roof here. But you have to tell me when you're coming because I need to make reservations. This is the Fondaco dei Tedeschi. This is a warehouse where the Germans used to buy textile, spices, all kinds, and sell them then towards the northern part of Europe. Interesting fact here. This is the room where, I don't know if you can see, I hope you can see my finger here. This is the room where the Doge used to come to do some of the dealings, to buy the silver and the gold to make the ducato, which was the coin that Venice used to melt. This was the summer room because there used to be quite a lot of wind coming through. And instead, this was the winter room because that's the only fireplace present in the palace. Palazzo. Okay, now I'm going to try to wrap up, but I do want to show you two more things. I'll be quick, I promise. Allora, what other? I'm trying to think. Now, oh, something else which is totally interesting. I wish this would be happening right now. I don't know if you see this palace that I have here on my left. This is called the Palazzo dei Camerlenghi. Who were these Camerlenghi? They sound like priests to me. Instead, they were not priests. The Camerlenghi was actually a duty that used to look for any tax evaders. Now, I'm going to ask to my beautiful friend to stay right in front of the door so that you see how small the doors are. I can tell you that Stefania is not very big. She's just as big as me. And they are actually numbered. This is the area where the people that were found not paying taxes would ended up. Now, nowadays we have some very good doors. You would not be able to see inside. Back in history, this would be a great, so that everyone could see who was not the taxpayer. Now, so hold on with me another few minutes. I want to show you. Numero uno, the shop that sells all the authorized uniforms for the gondoliers. Now they've already closed, but this is so the place where the gondoliers would come to buy all their uniforms. Now, one of the questions that I always get when I take my students, how much I miss my students. I hope you will be able to come back soon. Allora, they always ask me, is this, do the stripes red and blue, do they mean anything different? No, nowadays they don't mean anything at all. Once upon a time, they did. Once upon a time, so every very wealthy family would have had a gondolier, and every gondolier would have had a different uniform so that you could distinguish your gondolier. Now, the reason why we are up here is because I really, really wanted to add somewhere close to the top of the most beautiful bridge, Rialto Bridge. Now, have you seen how big this bridge is? And there is, I was trying to mention this before, there is a reason why. This was one of the bridges that was passed, this direction here. So the connection in between the political and religious center, which is in St. Mark, and the trading center, which we've just left, was huge. If we would have walked, it doesn't take us more than 10 minutes. So the connection was direct and straight. So they had to build a bridge that could hold the passing of a lot of people at once. As you can see, we've got this passage, and then we've got shop here. We've got the central row here, and I'm going to show it to you here. And then we've got also a third walk over here, and some more shops over here. Now, I think one of my favorites, it might be this one, though I have to tell you that the reflection is not the best. Let's see if we can go just a little bit down in the shade. Now, something else that I do want to mention is in this area here, so the palaces that we have to the left and to the right, they are in between the oldest palaces that we find in Venice, mainly because this was one of the areas that the Venetians found very easy to build in. So let's say that if they had to pick a place, this was one of the most, the best places really to start building. Something else which is interesting is the shops that we have on the bridge were meant to possibly give back to the government some of the money that were spent to build the bridge. The cost of the bridge was immense. So they used to they financed some of the cost of the bridge, literally renting the shops that we have here. Okay. Now, I think I have managed to pretty much. I was trying to calculate as well my times. I love to get any more questions. So I think I actually have to tell you, I'm not sure if I've seen all of them. I doubt. I love to have some more if by any chance somebody has more. What else could I tell you? Now, all these areas here are actually quite very trafficked ways. They're always extremely busy. All the areas, they are actually, thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm reading your messages. All these areas are actually very busy with people. They take the name from the activity that was happening in the area. So this, for example, it's called Riva del Vin, which means it's the dock where all the wine was unloaded. Now, remember, this Venice and the northern part of Italy is an area that we produce a lot of wine, and we actually are also well known for drinking quite a bit during meals usually. You're very welcome. And I just love to see your messages. Oh, you're fabulous. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes,
now,
Elisabetta,
please.
This has been really lovely. Absolutely fantastic. It's all just taking us there. And it's just been a beautiful, beautiful afternoon for us and evening there. So thank you so much. We do have some other questions in the chat that you might have missed. I'm happy to read them off.
Please.
If you have a moment.
Yes, please. Absolutely.
Great.
Please.
So
I have plenty of time.
Awesome. Thank you. So one of the questions we got was during the start of COVID, there was this message about how there were dolphins in the canal. Were there indeed dolphins in the canal, and have you seen them?
Allora, we had one instance where actually we've seen one dolphin on the Grand Canal. One. Yeah, it was very awkward, very strange for us because, as you know, the Mediterranean Sea, it's literally a Mediterranean Sea. It's not a big sea, an ocean. So we really think that he might have missed, let's say, the turn. But yes, there's a dolphin on the Grand Canal. Yes.
Wow. So we have another question about the road rules of the canals. In addition to speed, are there any other road rules? Are there traffic lights? How do people know?
Allora, there are traffic lights, yes, in certain areas. There are one ways because a lot of canals are very small, so they won't have there's no chance of going through with two boats. As I was trying to explain, which sometimes it just gets too difficult, about how to go on a canal, a lot of times there are signs that people literally screams out to one and the other, so that you would know. A lot of times, you might pull out with your boat, and you are not able to see who's coming from either left or right. So you actually scream, and there is a whole sequence of words that you can scream out to tell people what you are actually thinking of doing.
Oh my goodness. So a few more questions that we have coming in, you might have missed. Is there a flood? We hear that there's a flood barrier project going on.
Esatto. Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
Yes. Of course. So I'm not sure, if everyone is familiar with a name that sounds like Berlusconi. I don't know why he's always very present. He's a politician that's actually started many years ago the projects of what we call Mose. These are barriers which are positioned on the 3 inlets of the lagoon. They're working on air pressure. So when we can forecast a big tide coming in, they would lift the barriers. They would stop the water coming into the lagoon. So let's say it would get up to a certain point, and after that, the barrier comes up, and that's it. There's no chance for water coming in. They are working, even though it is quite a bit of a problem, because the barriers are getting how do you say it in English? They're getting damaged very, very quickly because of the salt, of course, of the water, and it's very difficult, the maintenance of the barriers. But they are working. Yes, they are working. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Thank you for that. Another question that came through: the palaces. They're so beautiful. They're so lovely. And I was going to share my screen, but I think people would rather see this beautiful walk through Venice. But the palaces you mentioned, were there just a lot of really wealthy people back in those times, or were they just simply named palaces as the common vernacular?
Yeah, this is this is exactly how you see it. There were approximately, if you look at as mentioned, about 1500s. We are one of the biggest city in Europe, and there was about 1,000 families which were extremely wealthy. When I say wealthy, you are talking about just imagine. I'm not sure if any of you, or maybe the students, have done any of the crusades. Now, the fourth crusade, 1204, the Venetians ended up to occupy Constantinople, and they literally took, we are talking about decades of taking all kinds of stuff from Constantinople, and they used all these decorations to embellish the palaces. So and most of the stuff that we've seen on the Basilica and the palaces that we went through on the Grand Canal, they were embellished with marbles that were taken from everywhere. But the people really made a fortune out of trading. We are talking about, Venice had the total control on the trading on the Mediterranean until Vasco da Gama and Columbus arrived, and which kind of stuck Venice on a whole of the Mediterranean. But that's it. Yes, very, very, very wealthy, uncountably wealthy. Imagine just only, and I just tell you one thing: if when you were elected to be a Doge, you needed to be extremely wealthy because, one, you were not paid. Two, you had to finance most of the celebrations that the Palazzo Ducale had to do for your election, etc., for all the dignitaries that were coming through. So imagine the amount of money you would have had to have.
Wow, that's really incredible. One last question. Are the glass blowers still there?
Yes, the glass blowers still there. Of course, they had to take a break. But yes, of course, they are still there. Yes. Murano is still alive, of course.
Well,